Welcome and welcome back. This is Chris, and the date today is April 18th, year of our Savior, 2026. And the title of this video is a continuation called The Apple Story Part 2. The Apple Story Part 2. And the reason why is this is the old book that my father and I published in 2001. And I've recently did a revision, and so that is officially available on Amazon right now for $20, and I will list it in the video description below. It'll be listed below if you would like a copy. I've ordered copies right now. They're on the way. I'll receive them next week. I wish I had one for this video, but they're on the way. So that is basically describing this 6,000-year war that we're involved in, whether you realize it or not. Most likely your church is not going to tell you about this, but this war began in the Garden of Eden. And I think it's important because when you look at, I'm like, what is America? What is conservatism? Because it's not what we've been told. We thought that being an American or being conservative is somehow connected to the foundations of America, that Protestant, that Pilgrim, that Puritan foundation. But it really isn't, ladies and gentlemen. It's about being involved in never-ending wars. It's about serving a foreign country, which is Israel. When you look at 98% of Congress that receives money from AIPAC and other Jewish lobbying organizations, it's really showing you who's in charge. And, that's cost a lot of Americans their tax money, probably, I would say, $1 trillion. And what I mean by that is when you're giving, $3 billion up front, which immediately they use and they can deposit that and make interest. They just get that right off, and then they can use that to bribe our politicians and direct foreign policy, in addition to the wars that we have fought and all the equipment, military equipment that has been used in these wars, the death and dismemberment, and unfortunately the impact of when young people come home from fighting in these wars, never-ending wars, and what they've seen, they come back damaged. And so you have a significant portion of military also self-deleting. America has to bribe all these other countries because our greatest ally is nothing but a psychopathic, pestilent child that has no honor. The word means nothing. So when that's the reason why we're in the Iran war, is because they said we're going to go into this war, and we were dragged into this war with Iran, and it's not ending well for us. I don't believe biblically our job is when we identify who Jacob Israel and who Israel is. Jacob Israel is the Anglo-Saxon, Germanic, kindred, Celtic, Scandinavian people, and we're aligned with Esau, the Edomites, Idumea, and we're united with them. And then we're going off and trying to dismantle and destroy Ishmael and the Persians. That's not our job, ladies and gentlemen. So continuing here in this book, Know Thy Enemy, and that is can be found on, I'm continuing on page 86 of my book. It's discussing Wesley Kane Clark, and he was born December 23rd, 1944. He is a retired United States Army general who reported in the 1990s, right? 1990s, that was before 9/11, I believe. And what was he saying? Now, he was an Army general. I believe that is a 4-star Army general. And he reported in 1990 said America would be going to war with 7 countries. That's Iraq, Syria, Somalia, Libya, Sudan, Lebanon, and finally Iran. This was in the 90s. By 2025, American military went to war against all 6 out of 7 countries to destabilize the Middle East, flooding these people into Europe, United Kingdom, and the United States, and other countries as well, to benefit Israel for the Greater Israel Project. The final country to go to war with is Iran, which appears to be happening in 2026. The ethnic cleansing of the Palestinians, which the Jews refer to as Amalekites. Amalekites is a Jewish code word for non-Jewish animals, right? So when you look into the Jewish religion, specifically the Hasidic Jews, they view, basically it's a pretty simple religious view, is that you have Jews and then you have non-Jews, and non-Jews are, they're animals. And this is clearly, I listened to a rabbi in Israel. He admits it. They unabashedly admit this. So I find that very interesting. So we find this ethnic cleansing. They refer to these Palestinians as Amalekites. Now there are Palestinians that are Christian. And how horribly they're treated and still being treated today. And Gaza is also a part of the Greater Israel Project. Now, the Greater Israel Project is an ideological vision that seeks to expand Israel's borders to encompass what proponents believe to be the biblical promised land. Remember that Satan has a counterfeit. He counterfeits in everything. So we have God's peculiar treasure mentioned in the Bible, specifically beginning in the Old Testament of Genesis 12, 1 through 3. That was Abram. Now, Abram was promised to be a great nation, which it was, composed of 13 tribes. And if you look in your Bible, you can find that of Moses and then Joshua carrying forth of the removal and the annihilation of the Canaanites in the land. So you can see right there, right, ladies and gentlemen, can you see right there? All the difference. So this was fulfilled, that Abram was to be a great nation. But of course his name, and that encompasses East Manasseh and West Manasseh, that means nothing to the Judeo-Christian. They have a cognitive dissonance. They have a disconnect. They can't understand. They think that Jew, Israel, and Hebrew are all synonymous words. And that's just part of this Christian Zionist programming and this cult mindset. And I understand it's very simple. It's just like, oh, Jews are God's chosen people. That's all I need to know. But there's a little bit more to life. Life's a little bit more complicated, ladies and gentlemen. So, but Abram's name was changed to Abraham, and that means the father of many nations. And we know that, and I've covered this, the marks of Israel, that they were control the gateways, and they were to be a multitudinous people, which they were have a king line, all of these things. And I was being a father of many nations, and that's plural. But Satan has a counterfeit. You notice that this Rothschild dynasty was responsible for setting up of this Jewish state with the Star of Moloch as their national emblem. And that was set up in 1948, and they've been a terrorist nation ever since. They're not good people, ladies and gentlemen. And what they do in Gaza is what they want to do to America. Bibi Netanyahu, who is Milikowski, a Polish Jew, he admitted that America is Rome. They refer to America as Rome or Edom or Esau, and they want to destroy America. So that's really interesting that they're our greatest ally, right? Remember the USS Liberty, right? 1967. Never forget that, ladies and gentlemen. So continuing, this territory as described in the Bible includes not only modern-day Israel, but also the West Bank, Gaza, and parts of Lebanon, Syria, Jordan, Iraq, and even Turkey. Jewish-American billionaire Larry Ellison, I think he's a 300 billion is what he owns, what he has donated significantly to the modern-day Israel, specifically to the Israel Defense Force, IDF. In order to truly understand the American political landscape, a fundamental understanding of the Jewish Kabbalah is important. The opposite of Jesus Christ is the Kabbalah, which is the antithesis or opposition to Christianity and fundamentally opposes Jesus Christ as God. See, they hate Jesus Christ. That's why in Jerusalem they spit on Christians. They've murdered Christian Orthodox Christians. They terrorize Orthodox Christianity, which was there at the time of Christ, ladies and gentlemen, far before 1948. Kabbalah and its system of wicked and corrupt is a system of wickedness, and it is definitely corrupt. Bibi Netanyahu is a criminal, and he is on charges of corruption in Israel, my understanding. And every time they try to bring up charges, not charges, but every time they try to bring him through the justice system, war breaks out and then they postpone it. So continuing, we see that Kabbalah and its system is wicked and corrupt, secret societies, including Freemasonry, Saturn worship, which is a six-pointed star, hexagram, which is the star of Moloch. That you can find that verified, and Amos 5:26 and Acts 7:43. Jewish mysticism, Hollywood, Pentagon, Aleister Crowley, Illuminati, Helen Blavatsky, Alice Bailey, Darby Herzl Schofield, Christian Zionism, New Apostolic Reformation, Prosperity Gospel, Hebrew Roots and Sacred Name Movement, the Seven Noahide Laws, which were signed in America in 1991, Political Zionism, Rabbi Jonathan Cahn. Remember Rabbi Jonathan Cahn about all the Shemitahs? And he's supposedly teaching Christians, and he goes, what did he say? He goes, it's not Jesus, it's Yeshua, right? And you have other rabbis saying, you can bring Yeshua, but we don't want that Jesus. So if we are thinking Christians, if we can grasp, conceptual thinking and realize there is a difference between Yeshua and Jesus. Remember, Satan always has a counterfeit. We have Rabbi Jonathan Cahn, Madonna, Roseanne Barr, Theosophy, New Age movement, etc. all have their roots in the Kabbalah. Kabbalah is the mystical interpretation of the Torah, which is the Talmud, the Kabbalah, the Zohar, and by mystical means, Luciferian. Where does the Kabbalah come from? The Kabbalah is a religion of the Antichrist and is the revelation of the government of Lucifer. Isaiah 14, verse 12, right? In your King James Bible, how art thou fallen from heaven, O Lucifer, son of the morning? For most Judeo-Christians, they'll hold up corrupted Bibles from 1881 and 1901 onwards, and that removes the Lucifer and puts in place a day star or a morning star, which is a reference to Jesus Christ. So the Bibles that they're using to teach in their mega churches and their churches across this once great land of America is saying that Jesus Christ was kicked out of heaven down to earth. That's why I say it's very important what Bible or what standard you choose. So continuing, the Kabbalah is the original religion from the serpent in Eden that tempted Eve with the forbidden fruit from the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. Genesis 2:17. The serpent convinced Eve that she should become like God. The great fall of man began with this forbidden tree. This same tree is the Sephiroth tree in Kabbalah. Kabbalistic knowledge was passed down by the satanic secret doctrines of the Chaldeans, Phoenician and Egyptian mystery religions, and was adopted and appropriated by the ancient Israelites while they were being held captive in Babylon between 600 to 500 BC. Kabbalah was then transmitted orally by the rabbis, eventually to be interwoven into what is now considered modern Judaism. Louis Finkelstein, June 14th, 1895. He was born in Cincinnati, Ohio, to November 29th, 1991, was a Talmud scholar, an expert in Jewish law, and a leader of the Jewish Theological Seminary of America, abbreviated as JTS, and conservative Judaism. He states, quote, "The apogee, or the climax of Phariseeism, is the Talmud of Babylonia. Phariseeism became Talmudism, Talmudism became medieval rabbinism, and medieval rabbinism became modern rabbinism. But throughout these changes of name, the spirit of the ancient Pharisee survives unaltered." End quote. And that's taken from The Pharisees by Louis Finkelstein, second edition, volume 1, the Jewish Publication Society, 1940, pages XX to XXI. So this is an expert, a Talmud expert in America, and this is what we have. We have Jews throughout America that are loyal to international Jewry. They're not loyal to America First. America First means that you're loyal as a patriot, you're loyal to America. America First. You're not loyal to a foreign country first. That is not being a patriot, ladies and gentlemen. The Universal Jewish Encyclopedia, 1943, says, quote, "The Jewish religion as it is today traces its descent without a break through all centuries from the Pharisees." So this is who Jesus Christ, who was condemning. He was condemning the Pharisees for their tradition of the elders, the traditions of men which have nothing to do with the Old Testament. This is who Christ was condemning, but they're saying, no, we get our religion from Phariseeism. The 1905 Jewish Encyclopedia tells us, quote, "With the destruction of the temple, 70 AD, the Sadducees disappeared altogether, leaving the regulation of all Jewish affairs in the hands of the Pharisees. A new chain of tradition supplanted the older priestly tradition, Abbot 1:1. So we find that Herod, who is an Edomite, what did he do? He murdered the last Hasmonean dynasty through intrigue, and I think married the sister of the last true Levite. So the biblical Levitical priesthood that was continuing, he supplanted that. And so now we have an Edomite infusion in there, and that's where we get Phariseeism, and that's what Jesus Christ was condemning. Stephen Samuel Wise, or Stephen S. Wise, March 17th, 1874 to April 19th, 1949, was an early 20th century American Reform rabbi and Zionist leader in the Progressive era. So was he loyal to America first? No, he wasn't. He was loyal to his people, right? A nation within a nation. Born in Budapest, he was an infant when his family immigrated to New York. Wise was also a founding member of the NAACP. You notice that the Jews formed these organizations for the black people, and unfortunately it doesn't end very well for the black people. I was talking to my daughter, and you know, when you're talking to the younger women in this country, women are a nurturing spirit. So they were never designed to be put in the political realm. They were designed to be a helpmate, ladies and gentlemen. But I said, you know, it was a hard concept for her to grasp, but she understood where I was coming from. That you look at the segregation laws. Now remember that a lot of the slave traders, which we in America, the black people, probably about 50% of black people hate white people. And for good reason, through propaganda. That's how they were instructed and taught, through education and through propaganda. But we never hear about, I think about 70% of the slave trader ships were Jewish. So we find that Jews, international Jewry, was greatly behind the trafficking of black slaves, specifically into America. And in fact, they were in control of that industry so much that they would close for the Sabbath on Saturday, which I found very interesting. So this was a founding member of the National Advancement Association for Colored People, the NAACP. Maybe I didn't get that right exactly. The late Rabbi Stephen S. Wise, he was the chief rabbi of the United States of America. So would he actually know what he's talking about? I would say yes. And so what he said is, he said the return from Babylon and the adoption of the Babylonian Talmud marks the end of Hebrewism and the beginning of Judaism. Now, for most Christian Zionists or Judeo-Christians, they're so ignorant that they're not even going to understand what that means. We have the end of true Christianity, because there is as much Christianity in the Old Testament as in the New Testament, right? Fundamental Christianity believes from Genesis to Revelation, this is a Christian book. The Old Testament is the foundation of the Christian faith. So we have the end of Hebrewism and the beginning of Judaism. And so we have the continuation of Phariseeism as found in the Talmud, right? And they hate Jesus Christ. Judaism, which has the infusion of the Kabbalah, is diametrically opposed to the Christian faith. So when you say our Judeo-Christian heritage, that is a lie. There's no such thing as Judeo-Christianity. That's an invented American political word that's been around about 100 years. If you can find Judeo-Christianity in the Bible, I'd like to know. I can find the followers of Jesus Christ in Antioch, Syria, where they were first called Christians. I believe that's in Acts 11:26. Well, let's go there really quick, ladies and gentlemen, if you want. Acts 11:26. What does that say? Acts 11:26. I say this over and over again, but repetition is a mastery of skill. This is designed to deprogram you so you can start thinking instead of just reacting to your programming. So whether you realize it or not, from cradle to grave, we have been programmed at a very young age, subconsciously. So you might go, yeah, I get it consciously, but subconsciously is how we react. And it says here in Acts 11:26, and when he had found him, he brought him unto Antioch, Syria. So that would be the northern area of the great nation of Israel. And that's probably going to be up, and I could be off a little bit, ladies and gentlemen, but that's going to be probably up in East Manasseh. East Manasseh, we find Syria right here by my thumb. So we find right up there, ladies and gentlemen, this is right in this great nation of Israel at the time, not today, ladies and gentlemen, that we find followers of Jesus were now called what? Were they called Jews? No, they were called Christians, not Judeo-Christians, but maybe I'm wrong. Let's read further. And when he had found him, he brought him unto Antioch, Syria, and it came to pass that a whole year they assembled themselves with the church and taught much people, and the disciples were called Christians first in Antioch. Were they called Judeo-Christians in Antioch? But you notice they were called Christians first in Antioch. This is the formation of this fledgling or struggling Christian church that was under attack by Gnosticism. This is, at the 2nd century, when you had these early Bibles that nobody seems to talk about, the old Atala version, or the old Latin Vulgate, which was about 120 or 150 AD, these were the early Bibles that were used by early Christians. But they weren't called Judeo-Christians, ladies and gentlemen. Well, continuing, Joseph Herman Hertz, September 25th, 1872 to January 14th, 1946, was a British rabbi and Talmud expert. So now we have the chief rabbi of the United States of America. Now we have the chief rabbi of the United Kingdom. He held the position of chief rabbi of the United Kingdom, that's Great Britain, ladies and gentlemen, from 1913 until his death in 1946, in a period encompassing both world wars. In the foreword to the first English translation of the Talmud, I believe that would be the Sonsino edition, the late Rabbi Hertz, chief rabbi of Great Britain, said, quote, "The beginnings of Talmudic literature date back to the time of the Babylonian exile and the 6th pre-Christian century, when 1,000 years later, the Babylonian Talmud assumed final codified form. In the year 500 after the Christian era, the Roman Western Empire had ceased to be." So we have the collapse of the pagan Roman Empire, the Iron Kingdom mentioned in Daniel, and in about, it's about 460 AD. And then that was transferred, the Pontifex Maximus, that position was transferred to the beginning of the papacy, or the papal Roman Empire, Roman Catholicism, in about 606 AD. So we find this Talmud is a continuation of the Phariseeism. Jesus Christ never tried to blend Judaism in with Christianity. He used very, very strong expletives against Pharisees, called them generation of vipers. He says, "You're of your father, the devil." He was a murderer and a liar from the beginning, John chapter 8. So we see that Kabbalah is fallen angel, occult science, or knowledge. It is a collection of Jewish magical texts which were given to mankind by a psychic communion with a fallen angel called Raziel. Raziel, one of the pantheon of fallen angels who served the light bringer, Lucifer. Now remember, Lucifer is only mentioned one time in your King James Bible, but it's removed entirely by majority by these modern corrupt Bibles that well over, let's say 95% of these Judeo-Christians use in their mega churches today in America and throughout the world. Excuse me. The Kabbalah describes the many angels and demons which inhabit the spiritual realm. It gives Kabbalists a road map called the Tree of Life, which is actually the Sephirot, the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, to invoke and communicate with these powerful spirits. The magical information in the Kabbalah originates from Babylon in ancient Egypt at the time of the pharaohs. It did not reach Europe in printed form until the 11th and 12th centuries. The Jewish satanic agenda, right? And this is conservatism. This is the Republican Party, ladies and gentlemen. We thought it was pro-America and pro-Christ, pro-Christianity, but it isn't, ladies and gentlemen. The Jewish satanic agenda is number one, androgyny, the blending of male and female together, because that's the religion of the Kabbalah. And it's also an extermination agenda as well. The first Jewish agenda is the androgyny, Beware of the World to Come by Christopher John Bajorknes. I'm probably not pronouncing that properly, and I apologize. But I'm going to spell his last name, ladies and gentlemen, because I think it is a wonderful work. And if you want to put that in your library, that would be great. His name is Christopher John, and that's his last name. And the book is called Beware of the World to Come. Now, you can find that in the Apple Store, the book I just published in April of 2026. It states here on page 8, the Jewish mystical set of beliefs known as Kabbalah professes that the corruption of androgyny gods and of androgynous Adam, which is Adam Kadmon, Kadmon, into distinctly male and female forms was a terrible calamity that needs to be rectified through a process the Kabbalists call Tikkun Olam. Tikkun Olam is a religious doctrine in Judaism which refers to various forms of action to repair and improve the world. So what they're saying is, my understanding, they're saying that because the fall resulted in male and female. See, that was not God's design. See, Adam, and there's some truth to this, ladies and gentlemen. Remember that all deception, propaganda has to have truth in it, ladies and gentlemen, because if it was 100% lie, then nobody would believe it. So Adam Kadmon in Kabbalah and in Gnosticism was created as one, and the fall resulted in the splitting of Adam into male and female. So the Jewish religion, International Jewry, is about blending, and this is a broad brush. There's different nuances. There are some wonderful Jewish people out there that are exposing this truth, and great. Congratulations, you joined the human race. Congratulations, you're not a satanic psychopath. Okay, wow. Thank you for not being a satanic psychopath. Do you want a medal? I think it's our duty as human beings to speak out against such evil. So the process of Tikkun Olam is to blend together. So if you look at the androgynous androgyny, which is referring to andro, which is male, and androgyny is gyno, right? That would be the feminine. That's where you have misandry, right? Some would say, oh, you're just being a misogynist, which means a hatred towards women, or a misandrist would be hatred towards men. And that's really under the banner of communism, is a hatred of men, hatred of the patriarchy, which originates from the Creator, Jehovah, Jesus Christ. So it's about them repairing and blending together, and that's done through homosexuality. They're behind the LGBTQ. It's about blending of male and female together. There's 8 genders mentioned in the Babylonian Talmud. Well, this is American policy. This type of satanic doctrine or fallen angel Kabbalistic religion is being taught in our universities today in America and throughout the world. This, continuing to quote, this expression means that Jewish people must repair the world. They believe that this process, repairing the damage, began about 6,000 years ago when Adam was created, then divided into Adam and Eve, and needs to be completed now or terrible things will happen. That's why they're operating in haste. That's why you find in Israel today, we find that Bibi Netanyahu or Milikowski, Polish Jew, who met with Rebbe Schneerson. Rebbe Schneerson, they named a holiday after him, and that was the implementation of the Noahide laws. Now, Rebbe Bibi Netanyahu met with Rebbe Sneerson he goes, I come to get your blessing, because Rebbe was a very, very powerful rabbi. Some believe that he was the Mashiach, he was the Messiah. So they're operating in great haste. They have to attack. They have to do this Tikkun Olam. They have to repair the world. And that's why they're attacking and mass murdering and ethnic cleansing. And they want to create this greater Israel project to bring forth their Messiah, which from a Christian perspective is the Antichrist. So continuing, they believe that this process of repairing the damage began about 6,000 years ago when Adam was created, then divided into Adam and Eve, and needs to be completed now or terrible things will happen. The clock then began to run, and a countdown of 6,000 years, during which time it is hoped that the descendants of Adam and Eve will have repaired the world, Tikkun Olam, and merged back together into androgynous beings, having the nature of both male and female. Androgynous Adam had within him /her all 600,000 twin souls of the Jews, the androgynous souls of all Jews that became separate into male and female half souls when Adam split into Adam and Eve. One of the androgynous twin souls resides on earth and is separated into its male aspect and its female aspect. Jews are reincarnated over and over again during the 6 days or 6,000 years of creation because they are imperfect and must repair themselves bit by bit, and each bit by bit, in each successive incarnation of their half souls. Their beliefs in some respects mirror those of Hinduism, Buddhism, Pythagoreanism, and Platoism, Gnosticism. They repair themselves in the world by following the 613 commandments. This is the tradition of the elders. This is Phariseeism, which was codified into the Babylonian Talmud, or the mitzvot of their Canaanite gods, El and Asherah, or Ashtaroth, whom they have renamed Yahweh and Shekinah. Remember that, as I mentioned in the first video of this series, that you have politicians that will go to the Wailing Wall, put on their Jewish cap, and they will pay homage in a Luciferian ritual to the god Ensof. They're pledging allegiance to the God of this world, not to Jesus Christ. And that involves the Shekinah glory. Remember, when the Jews are doing their prayer, the ritual, they're having coitus with Shekinah or Ashtaroth, right? And so this is the Yahweh Shekinah. Yahweh is not Jehovah, ladies and gentlemen. I know a lot of people, but this is the infusion of Judaism into Christianity. That's why I stand against Judeo-Christianity. It's basically Christianity being corrupted by Judaism. As I mentioned in Holy Writ, ladies and gentlemen, there is no such thing as Judeo-Christianity. If you can find it in there in the King James Bible, I would like to know. Please make a comment below and give me chapter and verse. I would love to know. I can't find it. Maybe that's just my ignorance, ladies and gentlemen. So we mentioned the 8 genders in the Bible. Now I'll pick this up, try to keep these videos, but you notice that if you're looking at the tree of knowledge of good and evil, which was really codified and as the Sephirot in the Kabbalah, they refer to their god Ensof, or Lucifer, as basically a creative force, and he had these 10 bulbs of divine light. Because remember, the Jews refer to themselves as a nation, they are the Messiah. That's a part of their religion. That's why they're atheists, because they are their own gods. As one rabbi says, I don't think you should just worship one Jew, Jesus. I think that you Gentiles should worship all Jews. Now, some will be offended by this, but this is, if you listen to what the rabbis say, it's very, very interesting. Know thy enemy, ladies and gentlemen. So these bulbs, there was some type of cataclysm, and 7 out of the 10 bulbs, or these sephirots, were broken. And so now you have these shards of glass, or these shards of darkness, that are covering this divine light. The divine light is Jews, and the shards covering it are Gentiles. And so not only do they have to blend both male and female together, they also have to remove the shards of darkness that were broken to uncover the divine light of these 7 Sephirot bulbs. And it'd be kind of like a bulb, like a Christmas bulb that you would have on a tree. And let's say they're broken and you have all these shards of glass. So you have to remove them to have this divine light in there. And those shards of darkness are Gentiles, anybody who's a non-Jew. So that's where you get the process of the agenda of extermination. That's why when they were ethnic cleansing the Palestinians, they referred to them as Amalek, Amalekites. America is referred to as Esau, Edom, Goy, Goyim. These are all code words for non-Jews that are animals, and they need to be exterminated and the rest be made slaves. And to a large extent, America is occupied, ladies and gentlemen. Our Congress, 98% of them are bought and paid for and controlled by Israel, which to me is treason, which means that we are slaves to a certain extent. We just are under the perception that we're free and, land of, the home of the, this is a free country, all of this stuff. To a large extent, we are occupied. Not fully. I'm not saying that. I'm not saying there isn't hope. There's always hope in Christ, but we need ministers. We need Christians that are not being influenced by a foreign country, that will unite under the banner of a standard, the King James Bible, under Jesus Christ, at least have an authority that we can all appeal to. So these shards of darkness have to be removed for the Jews to reign forth from the greater Israel, where they can erect the third temple and start doing their animal sacrifices, right? They're all doing this, their animal sacrifices, and to rule the world through the 7 Noahide laws, which are the law of the land in America already. This is not conspiracy theory, ladies and gentlemen. And yes, they were passed by the GOP, the Republican Party, right? The Bush family, Skull and Bones, Freemasons, which is nothing more than a Gentile branch of Judaism. Freemasonry, according to Albert Pike, right? Scottish Rite of Freemasonry, the headquarters located 13 blocks north of the White House, is a Gentile branch of Judaism. So, very interesting, ladies and gentlemen, but for most Christians, they think secularly. They just think you just go to church and that's all that matters, and you try to be really happy and smile, and that's just what being a Christian is. But for most, that's their reality. Let women dominate the churches and things like that. And so we're producing domineering women and weak men. And through the process of international Jewry, what do we have? We have communism. Remember, I mentioned Rabbi Stephen S. Wise, the founder of the NAACP. He said that communism, I'll call it what it really is. Communism is Judaism. I mean, that's what it is. So when you refer to communism as Judaism, or refer to socialism as Judaism, when you refer to liberalism, it's Judaism, or refer to feminism, that comes from Judaism. So we have communism in America. We have open society. That's also from Jewry, Judaism. We have multiculturalism, which is from Judaism. And we have transgenderism, which is from Judaism. And this satanic religion and agenda of androgyny and extermination it's all about destabilizing the Middle East. And what happens when you destabilize the Middle East? Remember that you have a 4-star general that learned this through his Pentagon buddies. He's like, we're going to be not only going to war to Iraq, but with all these other countries for a religious purpose, to serve Satan. So America is being used as an instrument run by satanic pedophiles. Iran is not wrong. America is run by satanic pedophiles, and that falls within the parameters of both the Democrat and the Republican Party. I focus more on the Republican Party because that hits more home. But if you look at the Democrat Party, the leadership has clearly said that they're pro-transgender. Well, that's influenced by Judaism. So now we can start to understand that we are in a war, and that you can understand why our politicians, Lindsey Graham, we have, Huckabee, who was supposed to be a ambassador for America. What a traitor. He's an ambassador for a foreign country. And then they're hiding behind this supposed Christianity. It's very superficial. If you're a thinking and practicing Christian, you should be able to look beneath this veneer, this superficial, basically counterfeit that we think's Christian. But when we dig down a little bit, it's not Christian at all, ladies and gentlemen. A little leaven leaveneth the whole lump. So yeah, that's where we're at, ladies and gentlemen. So I hope you're doing well. I am hopeful because I am hopeful a younger generation, Generation Z, is far more informed than the boomers that just watch Fox News, or Generation X, my generation, that's clueless to extent as well. But this message is to the younger generation to pass information so they continue fighting the good fight. See, this is all about contending for the faith. Remember that nations come and go, but the church, right? Specifically, true Israel, God's peculiar treasure, will be standing up to the gates of hell. The church will always be here, ladies and gentlemen. That's the word of God. So God bless you. We'll pick this up in the next video, Lord willing. Thank you. Bye.